Hi guys, I hope you're all well. It's currently Saturday the 13th of January 2018. It's our second full day in Port Douglas and I'm starting the day off by doing my weekly weigh-in because we all know, to somewhat of a limited effect, try and control my weight during this holiday. Now, we all know it's not been very successful so far, but at least I'm still giving it a go. Now, as I've told you many times in the past, I always weigh myself 3 consecutive times, and the heaviest of those weigh-in readings I take has been the result for that week. That's the reason why you see me constantly getting on and off my weighing scales. Something else I have to do this morning is retake my body measurements, because as you all know, every 5 weeks I do retake my body measurements along my journey just to see if I'm making any improvements in that area as well. So thankfully, because my mum's with me, I've got an extra pair of hands to help take all the measurements. And that's basically what you're seeing here. Now, when taking my body measurements, I use a 60-inch tape measure. But unfortunately, my waist and hips have a much larger circumference than the 60 inches. So I do have to resort to using a very long piece of string. So that's basically what I use as a gauge for measuring my waist and hips. We then straighten out the string and then measure it with the tape measure to get the measurement as accurate as possible. After spending 30 minutes doing my weigh-in and doing all my body measurements, it was then time for us to start our day in Port Douglas. But we do have an excursion planned this morning. The tour bus came to collect us at our apartments, and then we were making a leisurely drive down towards Cannes, but also stopping off at some of the scenic points along the coastal road, where we came across this chap getting ready to do some paragliding. But the wind conditions were just not right for this guy to take off during the time we were there. Anyway, we had to continue moving because we needed to get to the Skyrail Rainforest Cableway, which is basically cable carts or gondolas, which will take us over the Kuranda rainforest towards a town called Kuranda. So we're starting the cable cart journey at Smithfield Terminal, and we got into our cable car or gondola and it was like a little miniature sauna. But thankfully, as we started to gain altitude and get above the rainforest canopy, we did start to get a nice breeze coming through to help cool us down. And whilst my mum is doing the majority of the filming, what you're seeing now, whilst I was busy taking lots and lots of photographs. Now, this cable cart journey, gondola journey, does take a good bit of time, 30-45 minutes, and eventually you do reach one of the stop-off points, which is Barron Falls. And you can start to see Barron Falls in the distance while we're slowly making our way down towards Barron Falls gondola terminal. This is where we got off the gondola and had about 30 minutes or so to walk through the rainforest, along the boardwalk to specified vantage points of the rainforest, and ultimately Barron Falls itself. But after we'd enjoyed that 30-minute walk through the rainforest, it was time to get back to the gondola station or terminal, this time headed towards the final destination, which was a town called Kuranda, which was another 15-20 minute gondola ride. The scenery from the gondola was breathtaking and the sounds being emitted from the rainforest were unbelievable. During our descent, we went over the Barron River before eventually reaching Kuranda town itself. So I'm now going to show you a speeded up version of this gondola ride. Once we'd reached Kuranda, where we had a couple of hours to explore around the shops and markets of the town, and also for my mischievous mum to mess around with a dinosaur. We continued our walk around the town, where we sat down to a freshly cut coconut before making our way around to a local restaurant or cafe and had some lunch. After finishing our lunch, we then had a 10-15 minute walk towards the Croanda railway station, where we had a scenic railway tour booked to take us through the mountains, through the hills, down towards Cannes. But first we had to find our carriage and seats. And it's just typical that our carriage happened to be the very last one on this very long train. And it's just like when we go to the airport, our gate always seems to be the furthest away from where you check your luggage in. It always seems to be the case for me. It wasn't long before we set off from Croanda station that we reached our first stop, which was a different vantage point of Barron Falls. You have 10 minutes to get off and take as many photographs as possible, but because we were at the back of the train, I did have to walk quite far down towards some of the other vantage points of Barron Falls to get some decent photographs. So I need to rush all the way down, take my photographs and rush all my way back to the end carriage, because the train will start to set off again even if you're not on it. Now the whole of this train journey is a nice slow leisurely paced trip, winding itself around the mountains, hills of Croanda down towards Cannes, taking in all the scenery on this glorious warm sunny day. Every time there's a break in the vegetation, you get to see the glimpses of the hills in the background. And after a bit further along down the track, you eventually come to the Stony Creek Falls, which is on the left side of the train, and to the right of the train you've also got a nice picturesque view looking down the valley towards the hills as well. As we continue to wind our way down the hills, through the tunnels, the scenery opens up for perfect vistas looking down towards the coast. And when we're about 10-15 minutes away from Freshwater train station, which is the stop which we're going to get off at, we come to this very big bend in the track, which is at the Robb's Reserve, where you can see the whole length of the train, especially the locomotive pulling all of these carriages. So once we got off the train at Freshwater station, where our tour bus was waiting to collect us to start making our way back towards Port Douglas. But as we continue to drive north along the coastal road, we made a quick stop at a place called Palm Cove, where we went into a cafe on the seafront for drinks and a bit of cake. But for the last 10 minutes or so, I decided to have a stroll across the road to Palm Cove Beach to just watch and listen to the ocean. And then it was time to do the last push back towards Port Douglas and our accommodation. And as soon as we arrived at our accommodation, it was going dusk, so we decided to have a walk around to the footpath leading towards the 4 Mile Beach and watch the sun setting behind the hills from the ocean front. At the same time, taking the advantage of having a nice stroll up and down the beach whilst paddling in the Pacific. But this is where I'm going to finish this video, and as you've come accustomed for the last number of videos that I've released, I am going to look back throughout the past 24 hours at a few of the memories which I've taken in the form of photographs. So whilst you're enjoying those, I'm going to wrap things up and finish the video off right there. So if you'd like to continue following us along our holiday adventure, by all means hit that subscribe button. I wouldn't want you to miss out on any future videos that I post, which happens to be tomorrow.